Minnesota Vikings' first official depth chart was released today. And behind Justin Jefferson, there's a lot of options at wide receiver. We're going to talk about them next. But first off, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. If you like what you see here, hit that like button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of the content we have going on here as we inch closer to the regular season. Let's get into the video. There's a lot of intrigue with the Minnesota Vikings this season, especially as it comes to the wide receiver room. Now, we all know the alpha dog GOAT wide receiver in the NFL right now is Justin Jefferson. So obviously in the Minnesota Vikings, that spot, it's done with. But after that, there's a lot of questions, right? I mean, if you just take a look here at quickly at the depth chart that was released today, as of right now, they have the starters listed as Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne. Second team behind those two would be Jalen Nailor, Jordan Addison. And then you got a bunch of, because I feel like those four, especially considering the health of Naylor, which we'll get into in a bit here, it's kind of there's kind of an open competition for what that'd be the fifth wide receiver spot, maybe even sixth, potentially seventh, depending on how many wide receivers they decide to keep. You have the likes of former first round pick Jalen Reagor, former Ram Brandon Powell, who has some kick return prowess as well. Blake Prohl and Tristan Jackson, a couple of guys that, at camp, you've heard their name mentioned quite a bit. And then you got some of the other guys, Lucky Jackson, Thayer Thomas, N'Keal Harry, former first round pick, is here now. Garrett Magg, as well as the newly signed Jacob Copeland on this team as well. So yeah, I think this is one of the things that's gonna be really interesting to watch. I mean, obviously Jordan Addison being the first round pick, everybody was going to be wondering how he was going to do, if he was going to secure that wide receiver 2 role. But even outside of that, there's a lot to watch when it comes to the wide receivers on this team.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing I want to point out right away is something that, we're not 100% sure on, because according to this, it's Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, Jalen Nailor, and Jordan Addison. I think technically that would make Jordan Addison wide receiver 4 right now based on the depth chart. Though we don't know if it's just like, all right, Jordan Addison is just looked at as more of the backup to KJ right now, and Jalen Nailor would play more of a Justin Jefferson type role in the offense or whatever. But if it is true, and right now Jalen Nailor is ahead of Jordan Addison, that would be, I guess, just, I don't know, pretty interesting at this point with Jalen Nailor being injured, even though I love Jalen Nailor and I'm hoping that he's really good and I'm hoping he comes back. It sounds like he should be coming back pretty soon here. I don't think he'll make this first preseason game, so I'm excited to see what he has. But Jordan Addison has absolutely been tearing up training camp so far, the night practice, pretty much everything. And even besides Jalen Nailor, I mean, even KJ Osborne, you have to start somewhat feeling like he might be inching his way towards just that wide receiver 2 spot in general. I mean, we're not hearing a ton of KJ Osborne news coming out of training camp or anything like that. So I still do think at the end of the offseason, preseason, that Jordan Addison will take the wide receiver 2 spot. And we'll see a lot more during these preseason games coming up. But I would say if right now, if he's just considered wide receiver 4, I would say that's pretty interesting. There wasn't a lot of things that took me aback during this. And again, this is the unofficial depth chart. It really doesn't mean that much at this so early in the offseason, but still, it was a little surprising. I think the two for me was him, and then even Ivan Pace, with everything you're hearing out of camp, him playing with the ones all the time, all that stuff, and he's like the 5th or 6th middle linebacker on there. But so we'll see. But on Jordan Addison, I think he's going to be the second best wide receiver on this offense. So my guess is he's going to end up taking him over. But yeah, for the rest of the wide receiver position, it's getting interesting because outside of those 4, man, we're bringing in some talent. Obviously, some past first round talent in N'Keal Harry. You already talked about Copeland. Like, you're bringing in all these bodies. I was surprised. A lot of wide receiver moves recently. And who is going to be, obviously we're going to have at least 5 or 6, probably 6 wide receivers. And I know a lot of people probably would say Jalen Reagor is the most likely to go. It sounds he was still the main punt returner as well. Powell could give him a run for his money because he is also somebody that sounds like he's having a really good training camp as well. So obviously a lot of this is going to come down to these preseason games, I think. But it is interesting. This is getting spiced up a little bit. Jalen Nailor comes back. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how he comes back and if he is ahead of Addison, because he definitely was in the beginning before he got hurt, and he was looking good. So
then,
I don't know. It'll be interesting.
But then, like when you look at Naylor, it is kind of a weird case, right? Because obviously, with no JJ or Addison during OTAs and some of like the pre-training camp practices, he looked great because he had an opportunity to show what he could do.
Right.
And then you heard the same thing when they went into that first training camp practice. Then he got hurt, and since then, it's been crickets, and we haven't heard much about the injury itself. So I know, there's some things out there. Like, are all these wide receiver signings? Is it a concern that injury is a little bit more serious than what was expected? Which could very well be. But, Kevin O'Connell, he mentions injuries. He's much more vocal about injuries than Zimmer was. But also, he'll keep things close to the vest as well. Like, he's not coming out here and saying, it's a major injury, we got to worry about him. But it's been oddly quiet on that front. So you do wonder, do you bring in N'Keal Harry, kind of a bigger body wide receiver, to take the place of where you thought Naylor might fit on this team? I don't know. Then obviously, as we talked about the injuries to Tristan Jackson as well, luckily it sounded it was a lot more serious last week when he got carted off, but it sounds like he avoided a major ligament issue, which is good.
I think he tweeted like everything's good here, whatever. Yeah, and we like him. I know SK, shout out SK with Purple Skull Media. Go check them out and subscribe to them as well. I know he loves himself some Tristan Jackson, so I mean, I kind of root for him. If these guys like someone, you kind of want to root for him too. So I like him as well. So I'm hoping he comes back, because I could see him being, and he was looking good prior to that injury. So I mean, he could be the 6th wide receiver, and it could really come down. And I want Naylor to come back, and I want Naylor to have a spot on this roster, because we really do feel good. Speak like that. Naylor's Dave's guy with Minnesota Sports Talk. Go subscribe to them as well. But so I mean, if I was gonna say my top 6 right now, if I was just gonna make a guess, and I'm gonna pull Reagor out of this.
See, but Rager's got the weird thing where since he's a first round pick, his money's guaranteed. So it'd be a bigger hit to get rid of him, but also see it.
That's the thing that I'm still gonna take him out. I'm gonna still, just based off of what I feel from hearing stuff. That's the thing, is we're not at training camp. We haven't got to go there. I don't live in Minnesota right now. So I haven't been able to see for my own eyes who's playing really well. So you just kind of go through hearing, and based off of that, a healthy Tristan Jackson and a healthy Jalen Naylor, you feel like it'd be JJ, obviously, Addison, KJ, Naylor, and then you might even be reaching towards Powell, and then maybe Tristan Jackson, and then not having Reagor, even though Reagor is right now listed as our top punt returner. And like you said, first round pick, and from a financial standpoint, it might make sense to keep him around.
Or do you bring in, then you got Blake Prohl, who has been looking good. He's got the voice. So he can entertain the locker room with his singing prowess. Yeah, and he can maybe hammer it up at wide receiver on the field, be the next Adam Thielen. You never know.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, man, it's gonna be interesting to see what actually happens in the back end. I think we feel confident in the top 4 for sure.
Well, you feel confident. I want to see number 1. You feel 100% confident
in the NFL.
2, 3, you're feeling pretty good. After that, there's a ton of potential.
Yeah, 2, 3, and then 4th. Yeah, we don't know what Jalen Naylor is for sure yet.
Exactly.
We don't know what Jalen Naylor is for sure. We feel like he could be. I mean, there's a chance that dude could be a wide receiver, a good wide receiver too in this league. We just don't know. It seemed like it had potential. I mean, all the hype that was coming in before his injury, and you made a really good point saying like maybe that is the reason, because we are bringing a lot of wide receivers in, and even N'Keal Harry, like taking a chance on another first round guy who didn't really pan out he's supposed to do. I mean, that's kind of seems like a move where it's like not just a depth, not a for sure just depth move. Like he might be coming in to fill someone's shoes potentially, like you said. And I could see that with N'Keal Harry potentially for Jalen Naylor, and that's a good point. Like, when he got hurt, we didn't really hear much about it. It sounded like it was just minor, and next thing you know, he hasn't been on the practice field since. Yeah. It's been how many weeks? 3 weeks?
Kind of a week. Well, because
2 weeks.
Training camp kicked off last week, right? 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
But
something either way. Time goes by fast.
But it's definitely been a while though, for sure.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them.
But the best part of it all is we don't really need to worry at the top, because we have Justin Jefferson on this football team. And he's, like I said, alpha dog, wide receiver 1. And then KJ and Addison, especially what we've seen from Addison and what we've seen from KJ in the past, to go along with TJ Hawkinson in this pass catcher group.
Who is also TJ Hawkinson. That's another mystery, even though it came out today, I believe that he has some sort of illness.
Yeah, which is
weird.
I'm
like an illness. He's been out for he hasn't practiced in like a week.
Yeah, it is weird.
Like, dang. So, but he's still been there. So that's good. So yeah, who knows what's going on with that? Hopefully that gets taken care of for sure, because we will definitely miss him if we don't have him. But I want to go back to Jordan Addison for a second, just because, man, he is killing it. Like, his highlights are coming out constantly, and his route running ability is insane, and his toe tapping and his toe dragging is crazy. Like, every day it's a toe tap in the end zone or something like that. So I mean, I do think it has a lot. I think this kid just has insane balance, which we saw in college. But I think you're seeing that even in his route running, and even in, like, keeping his feet in bounds. It's insane. And I think you're going to also see, for the people who are the naysayers out there and you're worried so much about his size and maybe getting tackled, one thing I would say for sure is he does seem like he's a slippery player that just is hard to bring down, and a lot of it I do think is because of his balance. He just somehow stays up on his feet even if he gets hit. And another thing about him is, sounds like he's fearless. Kirk Cousins just the other day mentioned how, like, the thing that he looks for in a wide receiver is if they continue attacking the ball when there's someone draped over them. And he said Jordan Addison is like a natural at that. So I do think for a lot of the naysayers, even though Jordan Addison is small, I think is a positive that you can maybe get some peace of mind, knowing that I think he's not afraid of the contact, and he's going to put his body out there. And he does have an ability to shed tackles and stay on his feet, which I do think is a big concern. A lot of people have. So I'm pumped about it. I've been pumped, obviously, about Addison, but obviously you can be so pumped about a player and not hear much out of training camp. But this kid's just been lighting it up, and it's been Jordan Addison's training camp, really, as far as the media goes, I'd say.
I think the one thing we know about this team is this offense, especially in the passing game, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And the Vikings have a ton of depth at wide receiver. We want to know what you guys think about that. Let us know which wide receivers do you think are going to make the roster. Let us know down in the comment section. And we'll see you guys next time on the GG Sports Podcast.
Skol Vikes.